the Taliban are yet to reveal what exactly this new regime will look like. The world, though, is faced clearly with a new challenge. How should it deal with the Taliban? India is remaining ambivalent on the question of recognizing the Taliban. Can we really trust the Taliban, in particular on their assurances on curbing terror? Geeta Mohan has more on the new shape of the Taliban.
The formation of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan is in the last stages. The Taliban is likely to follow the Iran model if statements of its leaders are an indication. Mullah Haibatullah Akhundzada could become the supreme leader. Abdul Ghani Baradar might get picked as the president. The regime might also have a prime minister. The Taliban has already appointed governors, police chiefs and police commanders for provinces and districts. The Naya Afghanistan in the making throws up new challenges to the world and India in particular. For India, it is the beginning of another phase in bilateral relations. Unlike the 90s, isolation of the Taliban regime may not be an option. The biggest fear for India is that Afghanistan could become a haven for terrorists.
One of the primary immediate concerns is that Afghan soil should not be used for terrorist, anti-Indian activities or terrorism against India. I think you saw that in our press release. हमने इस बारे में काफी कह रखा है. ये हमारा एक main मुद्दा है.
New Delhi stressed this point in its first official engagement with the Taliban when India's envoy to Qatar, Ambassador Deepak Mittal, met Sheikh Mohammed Stanikzai in Doha. The Taliban have so far maintained it will follow a non-interference policy on Kashmir. But will it act on its promise needs to be seen.
I think we'll have to go by actions rather than words. I certainly do not take Taliban assurances at face value. I think that the attitude of India and the attitude of all nations should be show us, don't just tell us.
With the Taliban at the helm of affairs in Afghanistan, the options for New Delhi are quite limited. While India is adopting a wait-and-watch policy, it is also looking at its allies to ensure that India's interests are secure, be it the United States of America or particularly Moscow that has more influence over the Taliban right now. In New Delhi, Geeta Mohan for India Today.
The big question then, should India be recognizing the Taliban now? What are India's options going to be in dealing with this new Taliban government? What will be the role of the United Nations? Big questions to be asked. And joining me now are two of the country's most distinguished diplomats to give us a sense of what lies ahead. Should India recognize the Taliban or not? I'm joined by Syed Akbaruddin. He was India's permanent representative to the United Nations till not too long ago. And KC Singh, who served in several positions, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. Appreciate both of you joining us on the show tonight. Syed Akbaruddin, let me start with you because you were the one who pointed out just a few days ago how the international community appeared to be going soft on the Taliban, or certainly the UN resolution on terrorism emanating out of Afghanistan had left out what you called the T word. And you said 15 days is a long time in diplomacy. Is your sense that the world is going soft on the Taliban, forgetting their terror past?
So Rajdeep, diplomacy is usually called the handmaiden of ground realities. If ground realities change, they start getting reflected in nuances at the diplomatic level. So if you just go back a month ago, at the beginning of the month in the Security Council, they all passed a statement saying that the Islamic Emirate is not acceptable. They promptly dropped it on the 16th. Subsequently, they dropped what I call the T word in terms of terror and Taliban linkage on 27th. And on 30th, they now have a resolution which in some ways is a tacit acknowledgement that the Taliban is the key player and perhaps the only player there in terms of trying to establish security and that and a player with which the international community can engage. So 1 month, if 15 days was a long time or a fortnight was a long time, month is a much longer time in diplomacy. The ground realities have changed there, and those are being reflected in the Security Council too.
So are you saying, Mr. Akbaruddin, that this is a reflection of realpolitik, of changing realities, and India too, in that sense, will have to go along with it? Are you saying that the United Nations Security Council resolution, and remember, we were the lead through the month of August at the Security Council, are reflecting a growing reality that you've just got to deal now with the Taliban?
The presidency of the Security Council has a limited role. So the outcome is those of the sponsors. And in this case, the sponsors were what we call the P3, that is US, UK, and France. And the resolution, of course, was a negotiated one with two countries, that is China and Russia, abstaining, but the rest joined in support. So those are the changes that have happened. Now, as regards India, that's a separate area. And if you would like, I try and quickly summarize of how India views it. Now, India has always been talking of terrorism even before the issue gained global salience. So for us, it's a more difficult change to undertake. Also, we need to sensitize public opinion that the ground realities are changing. We need to adjust to them. And engagement at a level, at the ground level, does not mean instant recognition. There is a long path between engagement and final recognition. And we've started on that long path moving ahead. Diplomacy is again about negotiation, give and take, and there will be much of this before we move to the issue of either recognition or holding back. There is a long path to traverse as yet.
So you're saying this is a long road of negotiation, but KC Singh, there will be those who will say that we are now effectively going to start negotiating and possibly recognizing eventually the very forces who were responsible for terror attacks, including, if you recall, 2008, our embassy in Kabul being attacked, the Haqqani network with Pakistan support. Are you saying that India really has no choice? As Syed Akbaruddin is suggesting, there are certain global realities that we're going to have to live with, one of which is that the Taliban is the force in Afghanistan. Do you see any change in that, or do you believe this is something that is now inevitable?
Look, there is a long way off from full recognition, and even the Western countries. Now, the problem is that if the US president himself only poses the condition, he says, I'm withdrawing the troops because America is now secure. Al-Qaeda is not going to be harbored there. Now, he's not concerned about Lashkar-e-Taiba or Jaish-e-Mohammed. He's not saying there should be no terrorism emanating from Afghanistan. So if US also lowers the bar, starting from what Hillary Clinton had said, where it was a very high bar, before they could be for negotiation. They had to be a negotiated settlement. They had to be, Taliban had to agree to a joint government and so on and so forth. One by one, first Trump and then, of course, President Biden have conceded those points. Now, as far as India is concerned, we'll have to see how the other countries act. I think the lowest bar will be the one that China, Pakistan, perhaps even the Russians accept, which is some kind of a fig leaf of inclusiveness in the formation of a government. It'll essentially be a Taliban-led, Taliban-dominated government with some kind of maybe Abdullah, or maybe some nominee. But of course, there are 2-3 things that we have to watch out for. One is Tajikistan, one is the Panjshir Valley. The Tajiks are holding forth there in their citadel. They've taken weapons in, they've got special forces. Now, Taliban are playing a psychological game, and that's how they've gained very rapidly in Afghanistan. They're saying we have them surrounded. Now, that's easier said than done because you have mountains on 3 sides. It is correct, they may have cut off their land link to Tajikistan. So the supply route, which we and the Iranians and the Russians used in the 1990s to supply Masood, and that is how he managed to hold on. Right till 2001, he could not be overcome by the Taliban. Now, this may be just a bluff, but that is something that we have to watch out for. One is the Panjshir Valley. The Tajiks are holding forth there in their citadel. They've taken weapons in, they've got special forces. Now, Taliban are playing a psychological game, and that's how they've gained very rapidly in Afghanistan. They're saying we have them surrounded. Now, that's easier said than done because you have mountains on 3 sides. It is correct, they may have cut off their land link to Tajikistan. So the supply route, which we and the Iranians and the Russians used in the 1990s to supply Masood, and that is how he managed to hold on. Right till 2001, he could not be overcome by the Taliban. Now, this may be just a bluff, but that is something that we have to watch out for. But the danger is that the Iranians are quiet and the Russians are very eager to join the queue to start dealing with the Taliban. So it's not the same situation. But the Indians cannot just follow them.
No, is there a danger of being left out? Is there a danger, KC Singh, of India finding itself left out of this entire game that's now going to be played out in Afghanistan once the new government is in place?
Well, Afghanistan, what history teaches us is the game is never very simple. It may appear very simple at a particular point. There is the ISIS of Khorasan, which are opposed to Taliban. They came out with that. They never welcomed the fall of Kabul. They said people who capture Kabul taking the route of Qatar and five-star hotels are not acceptable. And they are the ones who caused the blast next to the airport. Then there is TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, whom the Pakistanis want pushed out of Afghanistan. And if they come into the Pashtun areas, you have another problem in the making. So even Taliban may find that capturing power may be easier than governing Afghanistan unless they change their spots, unless they really start sharing power, which there is no evidence of, or they become much more tolerant, a more tolerant Islam. They make women cover their heads, but they don't cut them off from jobs or education, or even more important, start going after former soldiers or former servicemen who fought with the ANA. They're supposed to have announced an amnesty, but the taste of the pie is in the eating. So at the moment, I think India would watch. We keep a channel open, talking to Taliban is of course the necessary thing. But we don't have to throw in the towel yet.
But do we?
I don't think the Europeans will.
Do we take Syed Akbaruddin, the Taliban, at face value? Or do we again have no option when they make conciliatory statements towards India that they will not allow Afghanistan to be used for terror activities towards India, but yet have these close links with groups like the Jaish, the Lashkar? Can we take such a group at face value?
So, Rajdeep, no, we shouldn't take them at face value, and neither is it inevitable from where we are that we will follow a linear path. I think diplomacy is always about more of a nuance rather than a linear path. Now, as regards taking the Taliban at the face value, no, certainly not. We cannot live on the basis of what happened yesterday. But neither can we live on the basis of what will happen tomorrow. We will have to judge them by their actions. And that's what I meant when I said that we are on that long path. We will assess, we will calibrate, we will decide what sort of engagement we need to move on. And then we will move in concert. Are not going to be successful in this endeavor.
You know, that's interesting the way you're putting it there, Syed Akbaruddin. Let me get KC Singh to get you a final word on that. Do you believe that, you know, the Taliban's past will haunt us now as we go ahead, as the government is about to be formed there, that we simply will have to be very, very conscious of the fact that these are groups that have links with terror groups like the Jaish and Lashkar, which have targeted Kashmir and India in the past?
Well, everyone has the same concern. The Chinese are concerned about the East Turkestan Islamic grouping, which are the Uyghurs. The Pakistanis, as I said, are worried about TTP. The Russians are worried about all kinds of Chechens who've been fighting with them. And we are worried about the Haqqani group linked into ISI and probably having, even as we speak, fighters with them of Lashkar or of Jaish. Now, this is the reality. This is something which the Western countries would also be watching. So over there, as we talk to them, we use the carrot and we use the stick. And the stick is that we will not recognize them. They would also be worried India might throw its weight behind the Tajiks. If the Tajiks are holding forth there in their citadel and don't join in, there is Dostum sitting in Uzbekistan. And from the Russian point of view, it's interesting because two of those countries, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, are capable of sealing the border. The only weak link may be Tajikistan, and the Russians have their troops there. So Russians are right there. They may appear to be joining the axis of Pakistan and China, but count on it. And that's why we've spent time talking to the Russians. Russians will take a position that suits them. And therefore, that is out of the three, one country that we can be talking to, and therefore understanding which path they're going to take. So there are multiple paths possible. And as
Interesting.
Mr. Ambassador Akbaruddin said, we are not going to choose any single path simply because we toss a coin and choose it. We'll weigh our options. We'll see how Taliban reacts. We'll see how Taliban is behaving. And then accordingly, and I believe most countries would do that, other than perhaps Turkey, China, and Pakistan.
Can I therefore get one quick final word from you, Syed Akbaruddin, because your last posting was at the United Nations. What do the events of the last month tell us about the UN Security Council in particular? Its ability to ensure peaceful transfers of power, its ability to ensure that countries do not go down the path of violence and terror to capture power.
So, Rajdeep, quickly, the Security Council was an organ which was devised to act in concert when there is great power cooperation. Today, we are seeing great power competition. Therefore, you will always find the Security Council not working in concert. And if it doesn't work in concert, then it cannot deliver on the goods that it is supposed to deliver.
That, to my mind, in fact, is salutary words, which in a sense reflects the crisis that the new global order in a way is facing, and Afghanistan perhaps is a manifestation of that. Syed Akbaruddin, KC Singh, thank you so much for joining me this evening on the news today.
Thank you, Rajdeep.